Hello, welcome to Tuesday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Caw, and I'm delighted because Keith Jackson is like Judith Chalmers, holidays every minute, and so therefore I'm joined by the one and only Scott McDermott. Scott, how's it going?
Not bad, Daniel. Yourself?
I'm very good, thanks. And Craig Swan. Swanee, how are you?
What's a holiday?
You must have a summer holiday book, Swanee, no?
No, I can't afford it, mate.
Yes.
Swanee looks as if that room he's been in, he's not been out it in about 6 weeks.
Listen, anyone that follows Swanee knows the quality journalism. He's been out everywhere.
Aye.
Yeah, that's that. That's my holiday.
Right, plenty of football talk to get through, and I thought I'd start with Rangers as I do a lot of the time in the Hotline Live. But Scott reports today that the next Rangers manager will have had no previous contact or experience with Ibrox. I mean, that would rule out people like Steven Gerrard, Michael Beale. I mean, what's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, I read that. I mean, that's obviously seems to be the kind of, I don't know for sure, obviously, but that seems to be the kind of vibe at the moment, or the kind of word coming out. And you're right. I mean, it rule out a fair few in the betting market, including the favourite, Steven Gerrard. I mean, I don't know. I personally, I'd be reluctant to completely rule him out at this stage because I don't think there's been any kind of concrete decisions made. No, with yourself with these things, you go for your top target. You don't get them. You need to go to the next guy, and suddenly it can become complicated. And as we've said on here before, Gerrard ticks a lot of boxes, whether you agree or no with him coming back. Ticks a lot of boxes, a lot of fans in favour of kind of his return. But if there isn't a connection to Rangers at all, then it is interesting because there is a kind of section of the support that think the next manager has to have an understanding of Rangers and the environment and the landscape of Scottish football. They have to get it as such. I mean, so many times on here during Philippe Clement's kind of ill-fated reign, we spoke about how at times, stuff he said in the media, some of the decisions he made, it felt like he didn't quite get it, didn't quite understand what the club meant to the fans. Stuff like that, didn't quite get Scottish football either at times, in terms of going away from home, trying to dig out results. So if you're going to go down that road again with someone with no experience of that, no kind of prior understanding or prior experience either of the club or the game in this country, then of course it's a gamble. But look, every managerial appointment you could argue is a gamble. But no, if that's true, and if that's the direction, then as I say, it's interesting because a lot of people, a lot of supporters, I think, a lot of people would agree with it. Think it's got to be somebody totally different, coming in fresh. Listen, Daniel, ultimately Rangers need to go and get a top manager. Does it really matter whether they've been at the club before? I wrote a column last week or the week before for the Daily Record saying when the new owners get round to discussing names, one of the names they should be discussing is Brendan Rodgers. And I kind of said that obviously flippantly because the next manager at Rangers has to be able to compete with Brendan Rodgers. He's a top level elite manager as he's proven in England and Scotland. So whoever Rangers get, for me, they have to be at a certain level. They have to be good enough to go in and compete with Rodgers. It doesn't really matter whether they've been there before or not.
Aye, we've got comments coming in thick and fast. If you want to let us know your opinions, please do in the comments section below. Let me throw a couple of these at you, Swanee. First of all, this is right out of order for William. He says, "No surprise, Swanee can't afford a holiday with the tips he gives." That's a bit harsh. That's bang out of order, isn't it? That's. Tell you what, William.
What do you think? I can't even afford wallpaper.
William, I was going to block you there. I'll think about it. Back onto Rangers. Rangers of the UK says, Gerrard's a non-starter. The thought of Beale come back with him would knock me sick. Get the feel the 49ers want a big name and someone who can deal with Glasgow and the madness. No idea who, though. He also says it would rule out Kevin Muscat as well. This one I thought was quite interesting, if I can find it. Andy says, I like the idea of a clean break and a fresh start. I honestly think Gerrard would, at the very least, bring the fight and passion back to Ibrox. This one says it's going to be Marco Rose. If not him, why not the special one? And that brings me, Swanee, to the actual odds I've taken. A little snip of the odds. This is from this afternoon. Gerrard, the Scot, says is actually still favourite, but Marco Rose in there behind 72. Barry Ferguson out to 21, obviously. It's quite interesting. I mean, I was going to say, who do you see being the Rangers manager? It's a bit of a loaded question, but how do you read the situation?
Well, first of all, according to William, I shouldn't be put anywhere near betting on. That's like putting water beside a gremlin, so forget that. Just to go back to the thing Scott was talking about and what you guys have touched on earlier, I think there's far too much stock put in these things about connections and past connections. It's all about the individual. I'll ask you a question. What connection did Ange Postecoglou have with Scottish football before he came to Celtic? Wim Janssen, Dick Advocaat, Steven Gerrard never had any the first time around. So these things, it's all about the individual. They've got to select the right individual. That is the key. And I don't think it should be brushed on, or he's got a connection, or he's not, a fresh break, or whatever. It's just got to be identifying the right guy, as Scott says, someone who can come in and compete against Brendan Rodgers. And it's what is quite interesting is we keep saying compete against Brendan Rodgers. The Rangers managers this season who competed directly with Brendan Rodgers got more points than him.
Aye, that's a good point.
It's dealing with the other teams. It's more dealing with your own squad and having them up and ready to go.
But it's dealing with Rodgers in the sense, Swanee, that Rodgers gets Celtic with that relentless consistency.
I know what you mean, and that is the thing I was just saying. Is getting through to your own team and making them like Rodgers' Celtic team, that they compete all the time, and they're 99.9% of the time they have their off days like everybody else. But yeah, I think there's far too much store put in these things about he's connected to the club and that kind of thing, and he's not. Or got to be a fresh break. You've just got to find the right guy.
And listen, Swanee's 100% right. It is about the individual, but with a new ownership coming in and a new sporting director, it also depends on what direction Rangers want to go in terms of playing style and all that. I mean, I hate getting caught up in playing styles, but no. With a new start, a new era, I feel like there has to be some kind of direction. No, there has to be some alignment. No, for the board, to the sport, for the owners, the board, the sporting director, to the manager. They all have to be on the same page. So, for instance, if you go and get a Sean Dyche, you're probably you've decided what kind of route you want to go down. Probably means more, maybe short-term success, trying to claw Celtic back next season, try and get a title or a trophy win. Or do you go for like a Terditch or something for ex-Dortmund or whatever, who you would think would be a totally different style of play, probably with a lot of younger players. That would maybe be more long-term for me, where you put you try and implement a style, but it might take kind of 2 or 3 years to get it perfect. So it has got to be about the individual, but it's also about what these guys coming in. It's about what road they want to get on with a manager. So they're going to need to be very specific, and Swanee says that they need to get it right, obviously.
But you can do it quickly, Scott. I mean, I hate to keep going back to the same name all the time, Postecoglou.
Yep.
But that style of football Postecoglou introduced, that 100 miles an hour, fast-paced football, he introduced that almost from the outset. And he didn't quite have the pieces in place after just one transfer window, but near enough. Yep. By the time he got through his second transfer window in January, he'd added Maeda, Matt O'Reilly, Hatate, Lila Bada, Kyogo, these guys. Celtic were playing. Celtic, I think, just after that transfer window closed, played Rangers on a Tuesday or Wednesday night at Celtic Park, the night the league kind of turned.
3-0 game.
The Rangers away in half an hour with a pace of football that we hadn't seen in the Scottish game for a long time. Even when Brendan Rodgers, his Invincibles were quite dominant, but there was a lot of possession-based stuff. They did play some fast-paced football. I mean, that is a myth to say they were. They did play some slick football at times, but this was something we hadn't seen before. They were outstanding, and that was implemented in the space of, I'd say, Postecoglou pretty much had that style implemented within 6 to 8 weeks. It just wasn't working properly because he didn't have all the pieces in place. But once all the pieces were in place, it happened quickly. So you could say that's a bit of a one-off, And normally it would take longer than that. I would understand if anybody wanted to make that argument to me, because it's very difficult for people to do it in a fast space of time, and Postecoglou managed it. But it just goes to show it can be done. And it goes back to what Scott says. If you identify the guy and he's got a blueprint, they're going to have to go with him, back him. And, you know, Celtic gave Ange Postecoglou £4 million for a 19-year-old that had barely played many first-team games in Israel. But he trusted him. Leila Bada, and look what they got out of it.
Right.
So I was about to say, Swanee, that's the key thing about when you look at the Postecoglou blueprint, if you like, but you still need things to go. You still need things to. You need to do certain things. You need certain things to go your way. First of all, you need a wee bit of money to spend. We're thinking the takeover is going to give Rangers a wee bit of money. We're not sure how much yet. Might not be as much as what people think, but you need to spend a wee bit of money. Also, you need to get your recruitment pretty much bang on.
It needs to be. Postecoglou's was pretty much.
Apart from that James McCarthy, or do you know what I mean? I mean, I can't think you.
Pretty much all of them were bang on.
Exactly. I mean, and by the way, not just bang on, hit the ground running immediately.
They actually started to get progressively worse. Your Marco Tilios and guys like that. But the original first batch that came in, all were sensational from the outset, right away. They were really good.
And we're sold or will be sold for a huge profit as well.
Huge profit.
You bring Kyogo in for Japan, he just hits the ground running immediately. Bring Matt O'Reilly in for MK Dons, a totally different level. Bang, immediately. I mean,
and he wasn't even the first choice. Remember Riley McGree, who went to Middlesbrough?
Right.
Jota out of Benfica's B team.
We actually look back to that transfer window in particular, or the two transfer windows Ange had. That set Celtic up for years, really, when you think of the profit they're going to make. It's pretty remarkable. And a lot of people, Sonny, backing up in the comments, Ange had no link or knowledge of Scottish football, and he won 5 out of 6 trophies. I think you make a very good point. It doesn't really matter the link to the club as long as he's the right man.
Don't get me wrong. Everything we've said there is right. I'm just being devil's advocate. The flip side is, in my lifetime, most of the successful managers at the old firm have all had a link to that club. Whether it be Martin O'Neill, Neil Lennon, Brendan Rodgers, Walter Smith, do you know what I mean? Alec McLeish. They've all had an understanding of the club or the Scottish game. No, they've all had a connection with the club. And Swanee's right, Postecoglou is probably the kind of anomaly with that. Wim Jansen was a season advocate and millions to spend. I don't think you'll ever see that kind of impact again, just that sheer financial impact. So there's two sides to it. There is an argument to say you do need to have some kind of understanding of the club, this city, Scottish football, but as we've just discussed, Postecoglou came in and did it immediately with no prior knowledge, just sound recruitment, a clear strategy that he never veered from, and getting players to buy into it immediately. And obviously it took the breath away at times.
And I don't mean to take anything away from any of the past guys, because obviously every single one of them you mentioned were top class, Scott, but even in terms of recruitment and the way football's changed now, you need to do it differently. Martin O'Neill could go to England and buy Chris Sutton and John Hartson for $6 million. You can't go to the English Premier League and get a player now. Imagine going and getting guys that, like Postecoglou did from the J League, no one's even heard of. The things like, Rangers, Mohamed Diamandi, for example, things like that. You need somebody to go into these markets and find 5 or 6 this summer.
Aye. Yeah. It's like
the markets and boom and go.
Can you imagine now, you think the summer of 2000, Martin O'Neill went to Chelsea, said, your record signing number 9, we'll take him. I mean, like you say, it just would never in a million years happen now. Hoopsaholic points out Postecoglou had a board who supported his vision, not a board who wanted to inflict their vision on a coach. Marzuno says, what happened to the root and branch review of football operations? All they come up with is Barry Ferguson and Gerrard. It's a good point. I mean, that was the thing we heard a lot about, Scott. They were going to, Patrick Stewart, when he came in, was going to tear everything up and look at it all.
I don't know if that was a bit of a kind of smokescreen, Daniel, the root and branch thing, because essentially I think the root and branch review has been the prospective American owners doing a review of the place. No, if you look back at that, Patrick Stewart said it was an American company that Man United had used, and when you look back, the kind of pieces fit the jigsaw. No, do you know what I mean? It looks as if, obviously we didn't know about the takeover back then, but to me, I think that root and branch review has effectively been, the Americans have registered the interest, but they've wanted to basically look under the bonnet properly. And Rangers have obviously come out with that. We need to do a review because, the caller's right. What is it really produced other than we need to appoint a sporting director? Swanee could have told them that at the start for half of the money they've paid for it. You know what I mean? So.
And there needs to be alignment there, Scott, as well. If you're going to employ a sporting director, I mean, the caller that came in there was talking about Postecoglou. There was no sporting director there.
No.
Postecoglou went to his button. There's another layer in the middle now. Mm-hmm. So the manager's going to have to be aligned with Kevin Thelwell, you would like to think, because I'm quite sure Kevin Thelwell's probably identifying players, if that's how it's going to be, to go to the board with. Is it going to be a Jurgen Klopp style? Well, this is who you're getting, or so they're going to have to be very closely aligned as well. So that brings another layer in here. It's not going to be a case of a coaching. Well, we don't know this, but if a coach is going to be able to come in and say, I want him, and him, what's the point of Kevin Thelwell?
Yeah.
I think exactly.
You could argue Rangers basically allowed Michael Beale to try and do what Postecoglou did, but that's the flip side of it when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You go and get Danilo and a few other players, Cantwell, it didn't work out. No, listen, there was some decent signings in there as well, but Michael Beale, if you remember, Ross Wilson had just left and Michael Beale decided, he told the board, no, let me do it. I'll go and meet these guys. Sam Lammers was another one. That was probably the biggest one. When he went and met Lammers face to face. He was convinced that this guy was right to play for Rangers, but he got it wrong. And if it goes wrong, you're snookered for the start. You're struggling. That's exactly what happened with Beale.
What about, just very quickly before we move on from Rangers, what about Marco Rose at the top, Scott, of the odds now, or next to Gerrard? I mean, he certainly looks like a Rangers manager to me.
Oh, I see.
This picture's been dug out about 5 times now.
Sorry.
Really well at Ibrox,
I couldn't resist that, sorry. Right, Swanee, let me hit you with this. Let me see. Jack says, a lot of talk about Kvistgaard and new signings, but the priority needs to be bumping Maeda's contract to 40 grand a week, give him the number 7 jersey before we even think about new players. And Jerry chimes in saying it'll be telephone size numbers to sign Maeda from Celtic, and that includes area codes. So basically, there was a report on Record Sport Online today. Maeda sort of saying he's paused contract talks. I think in fairness, he was saying just until after the Scottish Cup. But what about Jack's point that really that should be the priority right away? If he's not going to stay, work out what's happening, it could be better than any new signing.
I think all these things work in tandem, don't they? I mean, I think Celtic will be aware. Celtic will be aware what Dyson Maeda's thinking at the moment. I would be pretty certain of that. I don't think that everyone's in the dark and then Dyson Maeda and his advisors walk in one day in June and go, nah, we're not staying, or whatever. I don't think it works like that. I think we'll have a fair indication of what he might be doing or what they might be planning, and therefore planning in tune alongside it for what needs to come in. I personally am not sure I agree with the caller in the sense that I still think Dyson Maeda's value in a wide area is absolutely massive. And I think because he's come in and played as a central striker and he's done brilliantly at it, but he's still equally effective out wide. And if you can get another top-class centre-forward in there to supplement that, I still think he's just as good playing in a wide area, I have to say, the way he gets in the box and scores goals at the back post. The way he now creates the way he didn't used to. We've talked about it before. He always had the pace to get into position, but then it was slashed over the bar or overhit. Doesn't happen now. He's putting goals on plates for people in the box. Probably a bad example to bring that up after his last-minute effort at Ibrox. But I just think he's still got a lot to offer in a wide area. So I think if Celtic did have the option of a Kvistgaard, a top front player, I think that would be a wise move rather than go for him in a front. Because if you go for him in a front area and you go for a wide guy and then the wide guy doesn't work out, then what you do, you have to put Maeda back out there. Are you not sure about Adam Maeda? What's the situation? I still think they need another one on top of Adam Maeda, personally.
Right.
So no, I'm not sure I agree entirely in the sense of not bothering with a striker instead of getting Maeda, but I think obviously getting Maeda tied down has to be a huge priority. But it's just interesting the amount of time, the length of time he's been at Celtic. They talk about shelf lives for players, don't they? I think what was Kyogo, 3.5 years. Hatate will be 3.5 coming this year. Maeda will be 3.5 coming this.
Yep.
Do these boys want another challenge? You know, the thing is, we live in this country and think the world revolves around Scottish football, and it doesn't.
It doesn't.
These guys may have other things they want to try. They may have other things they want to do. My own hunch is the World Cup is a massive thing for Maeda, and I think uprooting and moving the season before a World Cup. I mean, I think it was on Record Online today, the Japan manager talking about the quality now of Maeda and how he's producing it all the time, and he's really at the forefront of his thinking. Clearly for that squad, and that World Cup's going to be huge next summer, and I think to uproot and move now probably wouldn't be wise. I think Maeda be as well staying at Celtic and being brilliant again next season and going into a World Cup absolutely flying. That would be my hunch. And then if you want to go after that works for Celtic as well. You get them tied down another contract just now, which extends it to protect the fee. And in a Josip Juranovic style, you then go to the World Cup, you shine, and you increase your value. Yeah. Celtic win, Maeda wins, everyone wins. That would be my sense on how this might work.
That's the perfect scenario, Swanee. You're 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And you know how, Scott, you know how these things work. You give somebody a mega, say for example, we're just for talking sake, we're doubling his wages on a 4-year extension, knowing fine well you're only paying double the wages for 1 year.
Yeah.
You know that because that's what football clubs do now. So you're giving the player a massive wage bump for X amount of years, but you know you're not paying it. You know he's going the following. That would be. I think, as Scott was about to say, I think before I rudely interrupted, I think that's the perfect way for it to work for Celtic. They get one more season. That'll be 4.5 years. Plenty of great service. You'll owe the club nothing, and the club will get a fortune.
It would be because it means everybody's won out. I mean, Celtic's success in the last few years has obviously been selling players at their optimum, at their prime, and it looks as if Maeda is just approaching that. If he's not there just now, certainly in the next year, as I say, with a World Cup on the horizon, he's in a great position, Maeda, when you think about it. I mean, he's got 2 years left in his contract, just a nice amount of time left. People are talking about extending, people are talking about maybe bids coming in for him. He's just picked up every Player of the Year award going at Celtic, get the PFA one at the weekend. He's just in a brilliant position career-wise, 27 years old. I think he holds all the aces. But as Swanee says, if Celtic, depends obviously if a big bid comes in. I mean, that's always the acid test. But if they can hold on to him for a year, if he can stay fit, in form, you don't see his form changing. He's not that type of player. He doesn't really fluctuate. No, he's hugely consistent. It certainly has been this season. Then keep that going. World Cup, add a wee bit more value if you can onto him. Then that would be the perfect time for him to go, and everyone would win out of that situation.
A lot of people in the comments getting involved. This one from Polio, he agrees with you, Swan. He says, when you see Maeda with the kids on the park after matches, looks happy and settled with another on the way. I don't think he will want to move his family around. Let's reward him with a new deal. That sentiment is backed up by Rebel, who says Dyson will realise Celtic made him a better player. He will stay, in my honest opinion. It works both ways, and he's also going to be a dad again. I don't think he wants to uproot. But there is a couple of people saying that he'll be off. I mean, your loyal Muppet says he's off at the end of the season. He's done everything in the SPL, and John says it will be a record fee. So just before we move on, what's your guys' gut feeling? Do you think he will be a Celtic player after the summer?
I think he will.
Yeah.
I think he will be for the reasons we've outlined.
Yeah. Excellent.
By the way, he also might look at what's happened to Kyogo.
Yeah.
And I know
especially in the World Cup year, Scott. Especially in the World Cup year. Exactly. Why would you jeopardise it?
I know. Exactly. I know Kyogo.
It means a lot to him because you've heard them talking about it when he's away with the national team squad. The last time he was away with the national team squad, he was talking about we want to win the World Cup and we think we can win the World Cup. Because that's what Murray Asher, the coach, has put into them. They think they can really do something in this next tournament. Madness for him to move.
He's a key player for them, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Bye. Interesting. I guess time will tell. Other big news from today, guys. Tony Bloom, his £10 million investment in Hearts has been confirmed. Apparently, I think it's 9.86 million, which gets him return 29% of the Tynecastle club. It's still to be ratified by the Foundation of Hearts, but I get that none of us actually know Tony Bloom, but I mean, is it good news for Hearts? Can't really see it being anything other than that. I mean, who knows?
Don't see how an injection have. Sorry, go on, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, just as you're going to say, so I don't see how it can be anything other than good for Hearts and good for Scottish football. You get investment for a guy like that. You look at his track record, obviously Brighton, further afield, Union Saint-Gilloise got a stake in that club as well. Both of those clubs, their progress in the last few years since his involvement has been excellent. So if you're a Hearts fan or on the board, why would you not be open to that? Welcome to it, excited about it. If you're a Hearts fan, I suppose the question is always, they've had a poor season this year, obviously, but the question will always be, can we get closer to the Old Firm? No, can we bridge that gap? Can we go up a level? Without finance, that's always going to be different. So that amount of money, having a guy of his ilk, obviously we know already about Jamestown Analytics have been using that already to scout for players and that. So to get him on board, I think if you're a Hearts fan, you're thinking that this could be a real game changer for us and maybe trying to get us up to that next level. Obviously they need to appoint a manager, they need to get their act together. I think the problem at Hearts has been poor football decisions in the last couple of years. It's not been right. They need a bit of proper stability now. They need to get back on track. But certainly, to have that level of investment for a guy like that, I don't see it as being anything other than a positive.
Timing's really good for Hearts as well at the moment, in the sense of that coming in and for a new manager. I think we saw at the beginning of this season with Jimmy Tillene at Aberdeen, I think the lack of European football is massive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great, it's not what you want, but Tillene was able to work week to week and he wasn't having this. We all see what happens when our teams get to Europe, and you're going to see it next year with Hibs, for example. If they get
so we Kelly as well, Sonny, this season, didn't you?
So difficult to try and play. I mean, and to be fair, Kelly and St Mirren didn't even have group stage football. Group stage football just removes managers.
Yeah,
I mean, it just does. I mean, Barry Robson, Aberdeen, Stephen Naismith, Robbie Nielsen was, they've all suffered because you're trying to. It's difficult for squads to deal with that. The size of squad you have in Scotland and the level of quality you have in the squad, you can't really change it around a lot, and they always suffer. I think Aberdeen benefited an awful lot from that at the start of this season with a new manager, that they were able to bed all that in, and it, of course, the wheels ironically fell off at the time European football would have been stopped at the time of the season. But you know what I'm getting at? It's a good time for a Hearts manager to come in with a bit of investment, and it goes the same as what we speak about when we speak about Rangers and Celtic. We always say Rangers and Celtic should never be more than 12 points apart, because even if they lose, if one team loses all the Old Firm games, they should just deal with the rest. The same thing kind of counts for your Hearts as a Hib. One of them should be able to go and build a team to deal with everyone else.
Yeah.
And then you take your chances in the games against the two teams for Glasgow. You can get the odd result or two. There's no reason why you can't. You saw it with Aberdeen. They beat Rangers and they were up there. They got the point at Celtic Park and they were still level at the top of the league into December. Now, they couldn't sustain it, but it just shows what can be done, because you play just about half your league games before you even get to January, or almost January. So, I mean, you can still be right up there at the halfway mark if you get it right. So, good timing for Hearts, good timing for a manager. I think if you're going in there, the only way is up and you've got a few quid at your back, now's the time to go and deliver.
Trevor says in the comment section, Hearts will become a feeder club for Brighton like Rangers will be for Leeds. I don't know how many Hearts players Brighton would be taking, but anyway. Ian says, how big a say will Bloom have now in Hearts? Will he appoint the manager? I'd want a pretty big say in things for 10 million quid. You'd imagine, Scott, he will have a pretty big say now. He's, owns a third of the club almost.
Got to say, nearly 30%. A big chunk of the club. And as I say, given his experience with managers, appointing managers as well. I mean, Neil Critchley hasn't worked out clearly, and I think a lot is. I think I spoke about it last week on here. A lot is kind of doubts about Neil Critchley, whether he was the right fit for Hearts. We don't really know whether it was the famed supercomputer that picked him or no. But listen, you look at Brighton, guys like De Zerbi, Hutzeler now is doing a really good job. Tony Bloom knows what he's doing, so you'd certainly have an element of trust in him. Whether he'll have the final say on a manager, I don't know, but I would think he'll he'll have a huge influence in that if he takes over 30% of the club, and he's obviously giving them access to the analytics. So I think he'll have a massive say in it. And why shouldn't he?
I know there was a tongue-in-cheek comment made there about being a feeder club to Brighton. I know it was tongue-in-cheek, but people forget to look at it the other way. You might get 2 or 3 boys at Brighton who are on the fringes of the first team. And I think going to 6 months at Hearts, they come to Scotland and absolutely rip it up.
Yeah, a massive difference.
Yeah, I mean, who was the fella that was at Hibs last year? Because of the Bournemouth tie-up, Marcondes.
He was
some sort of connection there, wasn't there? And Hibs were able to get Marcondes that they probably wouldn't have got him. But I think I've got that right. And for them, you know, and I think it can work that if he can get 2 or 3 coming from there that they can really light it up. Then what was the kid they had years ago, Lamptey?
Aye,
you get one of them that's hanging about the fringes at 17, 18 and needs a few games. He's an absolute wonder kid.
Might get Matt O'Reilly and load for 6 months next year.
Right, before we finish, guys, Gianni, who's in the bad books after last night, I don't know if you guys saw, but he said that he'd heard I was the cheap choice for the Hotline Live because they couldn't get Des Clark.
There's a man with a fire stick.
He is really on a last warning. I'm going to have no pizzas, slagging us off, but he does say I'll be watching Inter Barca tonight. The one game that'll be flicking between though is Ayr and Partick Thistle as well, or Partick Thistle and Ayr. First leg of the Championship playoff. Scott Brown's Ayr United. How do you see that going, Scott?
Oh, be tight, Daniel. I mean, these playoff games usually are. I think Thistle have got a wee bit more momentum now, haven't they? Just the last wee while, Brian Graham and Mark Wilson's obviously get them going again. Ayer's forms dipped a wee bit recently. No, kind of fell out of the kind of promotion picture. Obviously, at one point in the season they were challenging, but 2 pretty evenly matched teams, I would say. So it's going to be tight as anything. I mean, I wouldn't like to call it. I'd probably just go for Thistle over 2 legs. Just to say that wee bit of momentum. But a few players at Thistle as well have been through the whole kind of playoff process as well. They've been in it the last couple of years, obviously under Chris Doolan, getting to the final, and then I think it was a quarter final or semi last year. So I would think Thistle might just nick it, but that shouldn't take away from Scott Brown and Ayr having a cracking season. But it should be two fascinating ties. As I said, I'll be watching that myself probably tonight.
What do you think, Swanee? Thistle to go through?
Yeah, I think Scott made a good point there, just about momentum. I think, you know, just the way Thistle are coming into it, it was kind of nip and tuck with Aith Rovers of who was going to get the spot, and then obviously get the great win over Falkirk the penultimate weekend, and then you just feel as though they're kind of flatlined a wee bit towards the end of the season. So momentum can usually be quite a big thing. I mean, listen, we've watched the playoffs in England often enough. How many times does a team in 3rd place never get there? It's obviously the team in 5th or 6th that just scramble through and they come in flying. I could see Thistle probably just edging it.
Very, very, very finally, guys. It's always
a finally with you, isn't it? Yeah, it never ends. It just never ends.
Worried that he's going to come out with these finally.
Finally, two Ronnies.
I think my picture's given away. Gianni said that Barca versus Inter, 3-3 in that second leg tonight in the semi-final. Who's going to win the Champions League?
Who's going to win the Champions League? Oh.
Well, like William says, there's no point in me tipping it up. Not forgetting that. I'm not letting that go. I'm crushed.
It's by order. We'll find them.
I'm absolutely crushed.
We'll hunt them down.
I don't know. Hard to call that.
PSG. I thought PSG's performance against Arsenal last week was absolutely brilliant. And what I really liked about it was I have never seen a team like that off the ball. We've seen some good ones, you know, Guardiola's, you know, perfect team that he had at Barcelona, you know, the way they hunted the ball back and all that. I have never seen a team get into shape and organised in the way they did last week against Arsenal. Sometimes you can accuse a team of being a wee bit slow in their passing, and that allows people to get into shape. Arsenal actually passed the ball quite quickly. In their first leg, they played it between the legs really quick, and they were trying to get in, and literally they were fizzing balls into people's feet. People were getting on the half turn, clamped. 2 people. I don't know where the work rate came from. Luis Enrique has just done a phenomenal job there, the way he's got them. They've got that in place, and they've got Dembele up front, who's just having a season beyond all seasons. I think they might win it, and I think a lot of people would like to see them win it, and the fact that they scrapped that silly Galacticos plan and actually decided to start being a proper football club again, and it would be nice to see them win it for that reason. So I think I would fancy them.
PSG Barca be a decent final, eh?
I was going to say that, but I fancy Inter to get through tonight. The San Siro. Who knows? But just finally, no, I'm only kidding. I guess we'll see. A lot of people saying PSG in the comments. Let's see. Guys, I think that brings to the end of what day is it? Tuesday night is Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thanks very much for all your comments. Hope you enjoy the Championship playoff and the Champions League tonight. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Swanee, Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Daniel.
Good night from me.
Thanks very much.